I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1787 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about Howard Mears. He lives out there in Helena, Montana, and he's doing some really nice things out there. Howard Mears served with the Marine Corps in Vietnam, serving with the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing. He was in communications. That means, more than likely, he walked around with a radio on his back. Matter of fact, Howard says, I hiked around all of I Corps with a radio on my back. Thank the good Lord above, he made it through there safely. Finally, after a lifetime of work, he retired back to his home in Helena, Montana. He had an old classic 1947 Ford farm tractor that he kept. He probably rode it when he was a young lad, growing up out there in Montana. One day he was cutting weeds with that tractor, and he got an inspiration that is changing lives to this day. They wrote a story about Howard in the local paper out there known as the Independent Record, talking about what he's doing to change lives. It was titled, Vietnam War Veteran Raises Money for Toys for Tots with His Tractor. His tractor just happens to be a classic 1947 Ford Model 8N. My grandfather Payne had one just like that on his farm up in Dale County, Alabama, many years ago. Howard's tractor looks just like it. You are invited to go over to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com. Check out episode 1787, and there you will see Howard on his Ford tractor, loading it up on the trailer, getting it ready to go. The story was provided by Eric Seidle, who writes for the Independent Record. I'm going to share that story with you so that you can meet another representative of that great Vietnam veteran generation, one as great as any that ever heeded the call of duty from its country. Howard Mears is a tremendous representative of that generation. After you hear the story about him and what he's done and how he got inspired to do such wonderful things, I'm sure you will agree. Let's take a look at Eric Seidle's story about Marine Vietnam veteran Howard Mears. Dateline, Helena, Montana. Each summer morning, like clockwork, Howard Mears loads his 1947 Ford 8N tractor on the back of a flatbed trailer. He hits the road and gets ready to mow down weeds, all in the name of the Toys for Tots cause. Mears became the Helena-area coordinator for the Marine Corps Reserve Toys for Tots fundraiser roughly 7 years ago. Toys for Tots is a nonprofit that gives toys to in-need children every Christmas. Our old coordinator sent an email out saying she wanted to step away. I told her, if you can't find anyone else, I'll do it, Mears said laughingly. Probably under his breath, he was saying, man, I hope they find somebody else. But they didn't. Mears had to step forward. Howard Mears served in the Marine Corps' 1st Marine Aircraft Wing from 1966 to 1969 and fought at the storied Battle of Khe Sanh and at the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. I did telecommunications work, Mears said. I hiked around Vietnam with those heavy radio packs. After serving, Mears and his wife lived most of their lives in Washington. In 2012, the couple decided to move back to Montana, where Mears is from originally. Not long after, he became involved in the Toys for Tots fundraiser. I bet he drove that same tractor back when he was growing up there in Montana. Continuing. When I first became the coordinator, I was searching for something to do to raise some more money, but I just wasn't sure what would work, Mears said. He describes the fateful day when inspiration struck him. My wife and I were attending our Redeemer's Lutheran Church, and I volunteered to mow down the weeds on the property, he said. Suddenly, as if from a scene in a movie, a woman ran up to Mears, waving her arms as he was mowing. She asked me how much I would charge to mow her property, and I told her that I didn't charge and that I was doing it just for the church, Mears said. The woman was visibly upset, so Mears came up with an idea. I asked her if she went to church and that I would mow her weeds down if she donated to her church, he said. He thought, oh, I'm a dummy. The Toys for Tots. I could get donations for the Toys for Tots, he said. Mears hasn't looked back since that day when he was inspired. In the first year, I made $700, $1,600 in the second, $3,000 in the third, and $6,000 last year, he said proudly. This year, Mears began mowing in May and is hoping to raise $10,000. As long as the weather cooperates, I mow 6 or 7 days a week, he said. That's a pretty busy schedule for a retiree. Continuing. Mears said, on average, Toys for Tots provides around 2.5 toys per child nationally, but that in Helena the number is close to 6 toys per child, which range from puzzles, games, sports supplies, and stuffed animals. The community in Helena is so generous, he said. Mears cares about the organization, and it shows. Earlier this summer, he won the National Toys for Tots Coordinator of the Year award, beating out 800 prospective candidates. That is tremendous. Mears said he and his tractor are booked solid for the summer, but that he is always willing to try and help. I have gotten so many calls and could use more help, he said. Did you get that subliminal message? If you are out in the Helena, Montana area and you just have a tractor with a mower, why don't you give Howard a call and give him a hand? They end the article with this pitch. If you are interested in helping Howard Mears in any capacity with the fundraiser, he can be reached at hmears@mt.net or contact the Independent Record at eric.seidle@helena-area.com. Eric says this about the story. Howard Mears' story is part of the ongoing Community in Focus series on everyday people in the Helena-area. That is a wonderful story about a wonderful Vietnam veteran. I tell these stories to help people realize how badly mistaken those anti-war protesters were back when these veterans were coming home from Vietnam and the stupid protesters were calling them names and doing terrible things to the veterans. Howard Mears is helping show how wrong all those misguided war protesters were. Those protesters should go out to Helena and ask Howard Mears for his forgiveness. They probably won't. And it doesn't matter to Howard. He's going to keep doing good things because he is a wonderful Vietnam veteran. We appreciate it greatly, Howard. I take this opportunity here to issue Marine Vietnam veteran Howard Mears an official Vietnam Veteran News podcast salute for your service to your country in Vietnam and back home here in the States. Especially for the fact that he was named the National Toys for Tots Coordinator of the Year. He beat out 800 other prospective candidates. Howard, you are doing a tremendous job. On behalf of all Vietnam veterans and all Americans, I am saying thank you for your service to your country. We wish you the best and keep up the good work. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1787 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more of these stories that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?